वेलकम बैक। आप देख रहे हैं CNBC आवाज पर आवाज एंटरप्रेन्योर। ग्लोबल स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम और सिलिकॉन वैली में टिम ड्रेपर का नाम काफी मशहूर है। इन्होंने ड्रेपर एसोसिएट्स, DFJ और द ड्रेपर वेंचर नेटवर्क के जरिए दुनिया की कई इंडस्ट्रीज को सपोर्ट किया है। टिम ड्रेपर ने टेस्ला से लेकर ट्विटर, कॉइनबेस, स्काइप और चीन की बाइडू जैसे प्लेटफॉर्म्स में इन्वेस्ट भी किया है। और यही टिम ड्रेपर आजकल भारत में निवेश बढ़ा रहे हैं। भारत के स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम और इसमें बढ़ती इनकी रुचि पर मैंने बात की टिम ड्रेपर से। Tim, thank you for taking time out for CNBC Awaaz. Considering you've come to India before and you're spending more time with entrepreneurs in India at this point in time, what excites you the most about India?
India is such a wonderful country. I mean, I've really enjoyed every trip I've made here, and I've seen the progress the country has made. It's leaps and bounds. It's very similar to what I saw in China. I was fortunately the first Silicon Valley investor to invest in China during Deng Xiaoping's time, or after him, but it was him that changed China and made it a nice market system. Now China's sort of gone away for an investor. Nobody would want to put money into a dictator who kind of takes all the value away. But India is wide open. It's a free country. It's a democracy. It has some extraordinary, trust is getting better and better and better. The bureaucracy is getting a little bit tamped down, and things are starting to pick up. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason is India is vast. There are so many different Indias, and there are so many entrepreneurs that have come from India. They've come to Draper University. They've been on our show, Meet the Drapers. They've had, I funded Sabir Bhatia way back when, who started Hotmail. My dad was the first India venture capitalist ever. And he's not Indian, but he was the first India venture capitalist ever. We have always loved India. It's always been a big part of us. And Meet the Drapers, interestingly, more than half our audience is in India. So we decided, hey, delight the customer. And we decided to do a whole new season in India.
That's great to hear. But since you've been interacting with so many Indian entrepreneurs, how has the Indian entrepreneur evolved over the years? And what is it that you like at this point in time?
Real advantages to being in India, not just low-cost labor, but it's a provincial customer, and that's always good for a startup. They get to start and build their sea legs on their local people before they make it a global company. I think this is a unique time in India's history, and I think we're right at an inflection point. And I think that where China was starting to catch the US in GDP, and then they got the dictator, and it just went flatline. I think India, as long as it continues to be a good, healthy democracy, and the leaders understand that you lay down the rules and then you trust your people and set them free, and everything great happens. As long as they all believe that, India will cross the US, it'll be the biggest economy in the world.
So you have, in fact, invested in the recent couple of months in a drone company, in an AI company. Do you see these companies, turning into larger companies that would address bigger problems of the world? And I ask you this simply because you were the one who backed Tesla at an early stage. You backed Hotmail, like you mentioned, at an early stage. You backed Skype at an early stage. And we saw what Skype did during the lockdown for every one of us. Do you see any of these companies, perhaps the one that you have identified, perhaps something that is being built in India at this time that could be, something, the hottest thing in the world in the couple of years?
Well, I can give you my thinking when people ask me what industry should I look at.
Yeah.
The way I would describe it is I would say, let's say it's 5 areas. Okay, one is how AI is going to transform the world, one industry at a time. So if you come in and say, I'm going to change the plumbing industry with AI, great. The next is the transformation of healthcare, where with data and big data and neural networks, the machine can do a better job of diagnosing you than the average doctor can. Third one, Elon Musk. He broke the logjam in space and transportation.
Right.
So transportation was controlled by big auto, and now it's not. And that was because he wedged in there with a new technology, and he did something really interesting with it, and made a great electric car. But it broke the logjam. Now we have submarines that fly coming to me, electric boats, jet packs, vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, all sorts of interesting. So in space, he's completely transformed too, because SpaceX has opened our eyes to the idea, we're going to Mars, and he gets the best scientists and everybody else working for him. But it gets us thinking like, oh, maybe we should figure out how to harvest water on another planet. Maybe we should figure out how to build three-dimensional houses robotically on another planet. Maybe we should figure out how to mine asteroids, for that planet and this planet. And en route to doing that, SpaceX came up with Starlink, which in some ways is worth more than SpaceX. And that's pretty extraordinary. So when you have a big mission like that, if you have an awareness of what's going on around you, you can actually really benefit. And on the way to Mars, we're going to have a great adventure. Okay, so that's 3. The 4th is Bitcoin. And what I'm really saying here is there is a anthropological leap that humanity is going to take. Every time there's a new currency, and it creates less friction in the economy, and it builds much more wealth around the world, because it's so easy to do a deal. Because it's so easy, and it's such a trusted third party that doesn't rely on a bank, a government, a central bank, or whatever. So that's coming. And there will be fits and starts, and government this and regulation that and whatever, but eventually we're going to be straight at Bitcoin as the global currency, or one of many global currencies.
There was this time when a lot of venture capitalists in India, and perhaps this is the beginning of that so-called startup revolution, were betting heavily on consumer tech in India, because it is primarily a consumption-driven economy. Does that attract you at this point in time? Because those 5 things do not talk about the Indian consumption story. So, or it would just be, these would provide a base to address the consumer. How do you look at that?
I think that we are really going into a period where the consumer is driving the biggest industries in the world. And so when I'm backing a company, I'm always saying, but how do you get to the end user? Right. So B to B to C, B to G to C, somehow get to that end user so you can talk to them.
That's great to hear. So my last question to you is, the last 1.5, 2 years, we've spoken of a funding winter when it comes to investments in startups. Most of the late stage companies have felt it more than early stage. Last 10 years, $150 billion of VC investment has come into India. How do you see that number multiplying with more and more people and more interest, like, meet the Drapers coming into India and Indian entrepreneurs at this point in time?
Let's say I funded a company and it grew from 0 to $20 million in revenue. And then it was looking for $10 million investment to grow. And they go out and they hit one of these big, huge investment banker, venture capitalists. And the investment banker, venture capitalist says, no, take $100 million. And it's shoved down the entrepreneur's throat. And not only that, then they also say it would be fine if they said, just take this money. But what they say is take this money and burn through it.
Yes.
Marketing, people, We want you to win in this marketplace. So they do that, and they do it for a year and a half, and then they burn through all the money, and they go back to the venture capitalist investment banker who told them to do it, and they say, well, we're ready for more money. But the market kind of said, wait a second, let's see how this plays out. And so this perfectly good company that was doing 20 million in revenue, now doing 30 million in revenue, even though they poured 100 million into it, is going to hit the wall and they're going to go out of business. So we don't like that part of the cycle. It's not good for our companies. We like our companies to grow almost organically, take small amounts of money, keep their burn rates low, and grow and grow and grow. But then what happens is we show these great returns, and then these guys come in again. And for some reason, they all come in at once. Everybody with money decides we're all coming in at once. They're afraid. There's a little bit of fear there. They're afraid to be the odd one.
The fear of missing out is what you call it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
FOMO.
Yeah, the FOMO.
Yeah.
So it's quite real.
Yeah.
But that's a cycle, isn't it?
Very much a cycle. And
because it's giving you great exits when a larger
yeah,
or a
some of the
second
time,
stage.
Yeah, some of the time. In fact, in one case, I was able to exit when the big investor came in with just way too much money. I was able to pull out, and the company has had a little trouble since then. But normally, I'm not really looking to exit. I'm trying to. I mean, I got a chance to fund Tesla at the seed when it was one guy. It wasn't even Elon, and now it's worth $1 trillion. And that I look at that and I say, well, okay, I'm looking for the company that becomes $1 trillion. I'm not looking for an exit. I'm looking for a company that becomes $1 trillion. And now, exits along the way so that you can pay your bills and you can take care of, in my case, capital calls are important. But I don't look for an exit. I let other people think about that. I kind of look for, let's fund this business, grow this business, pivot the business if it has to, find the market, grow the market.
So you're basically there for the long run and to support companies perhaps for their entire journey. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Great. Thank you. This is great. Really, you're a great interviewer.
Thank you.
इसी के साथ आवाज एंटरप्रेन्योर में इस हफ्ते इतना ही। अगले हफ्ते आपसे फिर मुलाकात होगी। गुड बाय, टेक केयर।